From the historic conferences of Moscow and Tehran has emerged a fact of deepest significance. A new great power has risen in the world affairs of our time. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Since that fateful day in 1941, when Germany struck eastward, a common emergency has drawn the peoples of North America to their new ally. And watching their wartime aid as it takes the long road to Russia, the United States and Canada are pondering what the future holds for their relationships with a powerful, mysterious land beyond the frontier posts of the USSR. Despite the fact that few foreign observers have traveled into wartime Russia, one report is universally accepted in the New World, that the Russian people have fought for their country and their way of life with a fanaticism unacceptable by any nation. And now, with the Red Army's offensives everywhere approaching their titanic climax, the Western democracies are realizing that the effectiveness of the peace will greatly depend on how well they grasp the viewpoint of the Kremlin, on how well they understand the background and the memories of past events that live in the minds of those who guided the Soviet state through its early contacts with the outside world. "30 years ago, these momentous events began, when the German warlords massed their legions before the gates of Russia, believing their timetable of conquest was assured. For they knew that across the length and breadth of Imperial Russia lay a house divided against itself, an emperor out of touch with his subjects, scores of millions living as serfs because the regime feared the democratic outlook that marches with material progress. They knew that beneath a placid surface, the currents of unrest were astir, that a certain exile called Lenin was speaking to the people, that his dynamic words commanded widespread loyalty among the underprivileged. So the German eagle, swooping down on Russia, unwittingly released those mighty forces destined to rebound on Germany herself. Graven forever in Russian memory are the dramatic months that followed, when on every street the advocates of a new order proclaimed their case against the old imperial rule. Graven forever in Russian memory is the night of November 7th, 1917, when to the pickets waiting in the streets of Petrograd came Lenin's reminder. The philosophers have only interpreted the world. Our business is to change it. Behind the fury of the night, the relentless driving willpower of this historic figure, his stocky form appearing before the people's delegates to speak 9 simple words. We shall now proceed to construct the socialist order. In Russia, they still speak of the difficult years that followed, when the armies of the whites bombarded the Soviet stronghold in their endeavor to restore the old regime, of the difficult years when all Russia endured the grim privations that are the price of civil war. And we should bear in mind that they still remember, too, the day when their leaders learnt that a new and greater peril was now to face their struggling republic. For into the ports of Russia, in that moment of crisis, steamed the force of strange, gray-painted ships, flying the flags of foreign powers. Explained as an attempt to reopen the Eastern Front, the continued presence of these troops was seen through Russian eyes as an act of intervention against the Soviet state. And thus was laid that suspicion of outside motives, which for so long was to cloud Russia's relations with the world. In the Kremlin, the memory of intervention never faded. Sooner or later, the Russian leaders believed a major attack would come upon the Soviet system. And so, as a means of delaying the war upon their state, which the Soviets thought inevitable, was founded the Comintern. Insofar as it served the Kremlin's foreign policy, the purpose of the Comintern was to secure the support of working people everywhere, so that any power desiring to make war on Russia might be held back by its own citizens. Long will the Soviets remember Lenin's death. For what policy, what leader was now to take the helm? Fervent in the controversy rose the voice of the old guard revolutionary Leon Trotsky. Capitalism and socialism, he declared, cannot live together on this earth. We must provoke world revolution or we are doomed. But now there spoke a quieter voice, that of Joseph Dugashvili, known as Stalin, the man of steel. Throughout our Russia, said Stalin, there is natural wealth beyond compare. On these resources, let us build industries which will give us the means to defend ourselves against attack. In so doing, we shall also build a pattern of socialism for all the world to see. So from Stalin's plan came the policy the Soviet Union has followed ever since. Orientation towards the USSR alone. And for Trotsky, all that remained was the leisure to contemplate in exile his shattered dream of world revolution, fomented by his own conception of the Comintern. Do you remember, they asked in Moscow, the year 1928? For then it was that the Soviets launched the first of their gigantic 5-year plans to organize, as Stalin said, the capacity of our country to resist attack. Even in the great heartland spaces of Siberia, where once the Tsarist prison camps had stood, the dams and furnaces arose, secure from assault, from east or west. Today, Russians look back with pride on those years of toil when they denied themselves the necessities and the comforts of life to gain instead the means of self-defense. For as they gazed upon the giant new structures of the 5-year plans, they knew that Russia had emerged from the horse age of peasant poverty to become the world's second greatest industrial power. Watching their armies take wheels and wings, the Soviets were at last assured that, come what might, within the frontiers of their state, the future was secure. And with their growing strength, the Russian people grew in confidence, for with their state secure, they saw their promised future heritage secure as well. That brighter people's order for which, in their eyes, the Soviet system stood. And vividly they remember how that peaceful vision vanished, how the news suddenly spread through Russia and through all the world that before the People's Court stood men charged with the gravest crime on the Soviet statute book, conspiracy to counter-revolution with the aid of a foreign power. And to the prosecutor's question, which was that power? A witness answered, Germany. Sooner or later, Lenin had warned, from one quarter or another, the attack upon the Soviet state will come. And now they heard a voice confirming his prophecy. The policy of Germany, it said, is to acquire in the East the soil and wealth needed by the right. And that is why, reported Stalin to his people, our country joined the League of Nations, for we considered that despite its weakness, the League might hinder the outbreak of another war. And before the assembled powers, Litvinov made his plea for common action. Peace, he said, in a phrase repeated to this day, peace is indivisible. But to the Russians, watching Europe through the years of fitful calm before the storm, watching democracy and fascism uneasily size up each other's strength, it seemed strange that for the now powerful Soviet Union, there should be no place at meetings critical for Europe's destiny. And looking back to that day when Western Europe took the tragic road to Munich, it is well that we remember how the policy of appeasement appeared to Russian eyes. They have let Germany have Austria, said Stalin. They abandoned Czechoslovakia. It must be admitted that this looks like encouraging the aggressor to march east. Today, the citizens of Moscow still recall the fateful morning of September 1st, 1939, when they read a statement that shocked them even as it shocked the world. The Soviet-German non-aggression pact, said Molotov, is in full accord with the basic interests of the Soviet Union. And gazing out on Europe's crisis, they remembered Stalin's warning. Those who try to attack our country will receive a crushing repulse to teach them not to poke their pig snouts into our Soviet garden. It was then, in the moment of expected invasion, that for the first time in the history of the Soviet regime, the Russian armies marched across the frontiers of their European neighbors, marched west to meet and halt the German drives through Poland, to occupy the Baltic states, to secure the river defense lines of Bessarabia, The enemy is marching east, and we must act accordingly. And to tragic Finland, led by the Soviet-hating Mannerheim, the guns of their advancing soldiers gave the same reply. The enemy is marching east. We cannot wait. Today, the fiercest onslaughts Germany could mount against the Soviet Union have spent themselves in vain. And as the Russian counterattacks sweep forward, a watching world is asking this momentous question. When once their frontiers are secure again, what do the Soviet leaders see as Europe's future in the peace to come? Significant in this regard is the widespread interest in such groups as the Free German Committee, organized within the Soviet Union among German soldiers captured on the Russian front. Day and night, speakers from committees such as this are broadcasting to the Reich and to its satellites in Europe. If the German people, they are saying, prove indeed that they are determined to free Germany from Hitler, they will win the right to decide their fate themselves, and other nations will take them into consideration. Hence, the formation of a genuine national German government is the most urgent task, a democracy that will suppress any attempt against the rights of free people or against European peace. But now, as the dawn of a new era breaks across vast Russia, a new figure is coming forward on the stage of world affairs, the Soviet citizen. For the common man of Russia is thinking hard and soberly of what awaits him when victory is won. He is thinking first of the years of labor he will spend rebuilding the appalling devastation visited on his land. But he is thinking, too, of the giant resources that lie ready for the task, resources which the efforts of government and people have increased ninefold in less than 30 years. He is thinking of the contrast between the listless Russia of bygone times and the youthful, forward-looking Russia of today, the Russia that endured the ordeals of war because of its people's faith in the future of their nation. He is thinking of what that future holds for himself and for his children, of the promise of ultimate freedom and good living, which he believes is now at last to be fulfilled. For all around, he sees the signs that the state is relaxing the discipline of the lean years that have passed, opening the way to a brighter world and a broader view of life. Today, the Soviet citizen knows that his labor and his valor have placed his nation among the great powers of this earth. And as, together with our Russian neighbors, we face the coming years, we say, as it was said at Tehran, we seek the cooperation of all nations, large and small, to the elimination of tyranny and slavery, oppression and intolerance. We met in determination. We march on, friends, in fact, in spirit, and in purpose.
here is a typical audience which has just seen the film, Our Northern Neighbour. Drummond Wren, General Secretary of the Workers' Educational Association, is going to start a discussion.
Well, I don't know about you, but I got a lot of valuable information about the Soviet Union from that film. Then you'll agree with me that we in Canada and the other peoples of the United Nations have much to learn about the Soviet Union. In fact, the better the understanding there is between us, the less chance there will be of a third world war.
That film's a good start.
It's a very good start, and I'm sure it suggested many things about the Soviet Union that we would like to discuss. For instance, it quotes from the Tehran Agreement. Now, we've all heard about the Tehran Agreement, but many of us here have anything more than the vaguest notions about its provisions. And, for instance, many of us know that Canada and the Soviet Union entered into a mutual aid pact in February 1944. And do you know what its terms were? And, of course, the film brings out many other points that you'll want to talk about.
Yes. The film says that Russia's 5-year plans have made her the world's second greatest industrial power. I would like to hear more about these 5-year plans.
I'd like to know more about women of Russia, women of the trade union, also their maternity benefits, working hours, equal pay, and so on.
That's a very interesting point. Now, anyone else?
I'm a shop steward, and there's something that puzzles me. Why do they need unions in socialist Russia? If management and workers are all the same, what grievances can arise? Do the unions have the same purpose as ours?
It's occurred to me that Canada and Soviet Union have interests somewhat in common, learning how to develop our northern territories. We have ideas of preventing motors freezing in sub-zero weather. Maybe they have some better ones. They have good ideas of raising crops in the subarctic. Why not exchange these ideas? That would be an excellent way of bringing about good friendship and a better understanding between the peoples of the two countries.
Yes, certainly. And that gives you some idea of the sort of things that a group like this can talk about. And there's no end to them. The Soviet Union is a big subject and gives you ample scope for discussion. Now, I want to talk to you here in this audience. I'm not going to try to answer all or any of those questions for you. If you want to remember the film and to get something out of it, you must discuss it yourselves. Pamphlets or booklets are available at this meeting, which will give you some of the answers. Among them, the educational sheet, Films for Freedom, prepared by the Workers' Education Association, the Canadian Affairs pamphlet number 12, Canada and the USSR, and the booklet, Organized Labor in the Soviet Union, published by the National Council of American-Soviet Friendship. You can get all these in the hall. The rest is up to you. Arrangements have been made for someone here to open the discussion. Now, have a good argument.